Guys, I'm scared. I'm petrified. What if I was wrong? What if I was wrong this entire time about the Metroid Dread and Nintendo Switch situation? Now, in case you haven't been following this epic saga, this is essentially stemming from the Spawncast, which we do every Saturday night at 9 p.m. over on Spawnwave's channel. Essentially, I made a bet with the fellow cast members. I said that I felt Metroid Dread would not sell 3 million copies in its first year. If it doesn't sell 3 million copies in its first year, I get a free copy of Metroid Prime 4, whenever that comes out, for my Nintendo Switch. But if it does sell 3 million in its first year, I have to do something. I have to do something I really don't want to do. I have to do something that is pretty much the bane of my existence at this point. The game in 2021 that absolutely broke me. I gotta play this. Balan Wonderworld. The game that the demo made me crush a can on my head. The game that says true happiness in an adventure, but it's not true happiness. This game is terrible. This game ruined everything I felt about Balan. I thought it was going to be my AAA Knights. The dude even looks like Knights, but no, this game sucks. It's terrible, and it's the worst thing in the world, but I don't have to play it. It is still sealed right now, but maybe I will have to play it. Maybe I will, because we got some new information on Metroid Dread, and now the story is changing for some people. Essentially, today's video is going to be me talking about Metroid, clearing up some misconceptions about it, and talking about the latest Metroid Dread news that, well, maybe it does give a little bit of a credence that this game will sell over 3 million copies in a year. So if this is your first time on the channel, be sure to hit that subscribe button, be sure to like and share the video, but without any further ado, was I wrong about Metroid Dread? First things first, let's clear up some misconceptions about RGT and Metroid. I do not hate Metroid. If anything, I love Metroid. Now, Metroid was a franchise that I really didn't experience until I was an adult. I never really played it on the NES when I was a kid, and when the Sega Genesis and Super Nintendo were out, I had a Sega Genesis. So the first time I played Super Metroid, as in actually sitting down to play this game in its entirety, I was like 18 or 19, so I was an adult, and I really enjoyed my experience with it. Did you know that my most played game of all time is actually a Metroid game? No, you didn't know that because you make assumptions, or maybe you did know that because I'm pretty sure I made a video on this years ago about what my most played game was. But yes, it is a Metroid game. It was actually Metroid Prime Hunters for the Nintendo DS. Now, upon first inspection, Metroid Prime Hunters is an okay single player experience. You know, it was decent. It was really just a tech demo, I felt, for the Nintendo Switch. You know, you had recycled boss battles, unfortunately, in that game, but it was a gorgeous looking game and a gorgeous playing game. So if the single player wasn't really all that great, what did I spend my time doing? Grasshopper. It was the online multiplayer. You see, I was in a clan, okay? I was in the Chozo Guard. Do you remember Jahorden? Do you remember the Royal Elites? Do you remember B-Peps and Mr. Malott? No, you don't, because you were not there during the peak of Metroid Prime Hunters Online. It was an awesome online experience, and me and my buddy really gravitated towards it because of the fact that you couldn't really use button controls. You had to use a touchscreen in order to be good at this game. So it really came down to precision. You had to be very precise when you were playing this game. And honestly, we played this game for hundreds of thousands of hours. We got to the point of where we learned how to beat hackers. You see, hackers sort of infiltrated. There's going to be some RGT stories in this video, so just get used to it. Hackers essentially infiltrated this game. So you would be playing and you would have a ranking. There was a ranking system in the game. And so like you would be a 4-star Trace or a 4-star Silex or something like that, and you'd come across a 1-star character. So you're going to be like, oh, you know, I'm going to mop the floor with this guy. But next thing you know, the dude's going through walls and stuff like that. So what do? Well, we found a way to circumvent it to where you could disconnect, a clean disconnect, and not get a loss. Because if you simply unplugged your router, you would get a loss in the game. What you would do is, you essentially have to run away from the router. So it would be like, you know, midnight, 1 in the morning, me and my homie would be playing the game, be like, yo, this Trace is going through walls, I gotta make a move. And like I lived on a 2nd floor apartment, and you would just run down the stairs and you would start running down the street. And then once it disconnected, you had a nice clean disconnect and you did not get a loss. So my neighbors probably thought I was absolutely crazy. Some of my neighbors were weird anyways. There was one dude who lived next door to me. I was definitely like in my early 20s at this time, and I had this neighbor neighbor who was like 40 something and his mom paid for his apartment, which I thought was really strange. But like he had some weird addiction problems, and like sometimes he would knock on my door at like 2 in the morning and be like, "Hey Sean, you want to watch Steel Magnolias with me?" And it really got to the point of where I was like, dude, if you touch my door again, I'm going to throw you down the stairs. Like, do not bother me at 2 in the morning. Do not knock on my door when you're messed up on whatever substances you're doing. I don't like it and I can't handle this. And then he would come over like the next day, like I'd see him outside and be like, "Oh, I'm sorry about last night." And I'd be like, dude, seriously, you touch my door again, I'm throwing you down the stairs, and nobody will care. Nobody will notice because you're annoying. You're annoying. But bringing everything back full circle, yes, Metroid Prime Hunters was my most played game of all time. So I love Metroid games, okay? I had Metroid Prime 1, 2, and 3, okay? I played Other M, and I loved Other M, and I still love Other M, and I think it's a fantastic game that people criminally underrate, and they just don't like it for whatever stupid reasons. So I am a big Metroid fan. I just look at sales statistics. I look at sales data. And until this point, right now, today, August 15th, Metroid has never sold over 3 million copies on any system. That's including the Nintendo DS, which was very successful. That's including the Nintendo Wii, which was very successful. That's also including the 3DS. The last time we saw a Metroid game was Metroid 2 Samus Returns, of course, that was redone for the 3DS. You know how many copies that sold? Like 700,000. Under a million. On a system that had a 75+ million install base at the time. Now I get it, people moved on to the Nintendo Switch, but still you have to look at facts, and statistically speaking, Metroid has never sold over 3 million copies. That's a fact. That is a fact. So then why am I a little bit nervous that that will end up coming into my life? Well, we've gotten some interesting information when it comes to pre-orders of Metroid Dread. Now, I'm not one who looks too much into pre-orders. I think it does sort of gauge a general interest in the game, and we're going to explain why I feel Metroid Dread is doing so well in the pre-orders in just a minute. But when E3 came and went, the most top-selling pre-ordered game was actually Metroid Dread. And since then, GameStop has actually released a list of the top 10 pre-ordered games for the Nintendo Switch. Now, this data is starting on June 8th up until, I'm guessing, the recent time. You know, they didn't say when the cutoff for this was, but I'm just going to assume that, you know, it's probably for the beginning of August. And when you look at this list, you can see a lot of different games. I'm kind of surprised Advance Wars is so low. It's coming in at number 10. But I really thought that the top-selling pre-order game would be a Pokemon game, but no, it's Metroid. So Metroid Dread is doing well. It's doing very well in the pre-orders. I know my comrade OJ over on Player Essence made a video saying the Switch effect for Metroid Dread. The Switch effect is going to hit Metroid Dread and it's going to sell more than you think it's going to sell. But I still have some contingencies with this. Because yes, Metroid Dread is doing very well in the pre-orders. Let's not beat around the bush with this. It's the #1 pre-ordered game for the Nintendo Switch. However, we do have to remember something. The Metroid fan base is a die-hard fan base. Every time a Metroid game comes out, I buy it on day one. Every time a Metroid game comes out, OJ probably buys it on day one. Rule of Two Review buys it on day one. The vocal majority of Metroid fans will pick up the game on day one. When Samus Returns came out on the 3DS, initially it sold pretty decently and then it just sort of fell off a cliff. So I feel like the people that are pre-ordering this are you and me and the people who love Metroid and who want to see this game succeed, but we're going to buy it anyways. And like once that die-hard fan base of about 500,000 to 1 million people pick up the game, what's going to happen after that? What's going to be the tail end of this game? And that's really where my concern comes in. I know there are diehard Metroid fans. I am one of them. Get over it. But the fact of the matter is, the diehard Metroid fan base has always been sort of a small fan base when it comes to the Nintendo Switch. Now, Metroid Dread does have the benefit of releasing right alongside of the Nintendo Switch OLED, so I do think that that could help with this game. People pick up a fancy new Nintendo Switch. You want a game to sort of look at how better this screen is compared to the original Switch. What better way to do it than by picking up Metroid Dread? Of course, Nintendo's been doing a pretty decent job promoting this game as well on social media, showing updates on Twitter, showing updates on Facebook, of course, talking about the Game Boy games that you can't play on the Nintendo Switch, because who wants to play the classics? Who wants to play the great games in the franchise? We just want to play the new game, and Metroid on the NES and Super Metroid on the Super Nintendo. Put the damn Game Boy games on there. We know it's coming, just go ahead and do it. But yes, Metroid Fever is alive and well right now, but there are still some issues going on. Let's look at a game that just released for the Nintendo Switch, Axiom Verge 2, which is a Metroidvania game. What's the price of that game? It's $20. I honestly feel like a 2D Metroidvania game coming out for a full $60, well, not a big deal to me or you, to the general consumer, the general fan base out there, I do think that they will have a bit of hesitation when it comes to picking up this game. That's just how I feel, because of the fact that there are so many Metroidvania games out there, games like Hollow Knight, that come in at a fraction of the price. And to wrap things up of why I'm still not sold on Metroid Dread selling over 3 million copies, let's talk about this Nintendo Switch effect, shall we? And let's look at a franchise that has been sort of getting a resurgence. It's actually a franchise that originally released on the Nintendo Wii, and since then, we've been seeing more iterations of the game, we've been seeing redone versions of the games, and that is Xenoblade Chronicles. Now, Xenoblade Chronicles is very popular. Think of how popular characters like Shulk and whatnot are. The Monado, I love the Monado, the power of the Monado. Like, people love Xenoblade Chronicles. Let's look at Xenoblade Chronicles 2 on the Nintendo Switch. How many copies of that game have sold to date? Has it exceeded over 3 million copies? No. It's just a little bit over 2 million copies, which of course is very successful because we're already talking about Xenoblade Chronicles 3 potentially coming out in 2022. So the litmus test doesn't have to be 15 million plus sold for Metroid Dread to be a successful game. I honestly feel like if Metroid Dread sells around 2 million copies in its first year, it'll still be successful. So where was that switch effect with Xenoblade Chronicles 2? Where was that switch effect with Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition? Two franchises that are much newer, two franchises that younger gamers who didn't grow up during the NES and Super NES era, that maybe grew up during the Wii and the Xbox 360 era, games that these people would be familiar with, games that people would say, oh, I remember Xenoblade, there's a new Xenoblade, awesome. There hasn't been a new 2D Metroid in 19 years. You haven't gotten a 3D Metroid game in the style of a Metroid Prime since the Nintendo Wii. So I just have a hard time believing that all of a sudden, all of these people are going to come out of the woodwork and want to pay $60 for a Metroidvania experience. I could be wrong. I could be wrong. I might end up playing this stupid game after all. And you know what? If I do have to play it, that's fine with me. It's not a big deal. This is all fun and games to me. I love seeing you guys tag me every time somebody talks about Metroid Dread, or every time somebody talks about Balan Wonderworld on Twitter, like, RGT, you better get ready to play it. Like, it's fun to me. This isn't the end of the world if I have to play it. Like, yes, I will hate it. I will be a miserable person and I will stream it on the live channel. But if Metroid Dread does sell over 3 million copies, you know, it is what it is. It'll definitely be a celebration for Metroid fans. I still just have some reservations. So was I wrong about this? I guess time will tell, you know. That's really the only measure of instinct that we're going to get with this. What does this game end up selling? Does it end up breaking that 3 million threshold in the first year? Could it sell 5 million? Maybe. It could also sell 2 million though, and I still think Nintendo would be very happy with that. So let me know in the comments section down below what you think of this Metroid Dread saga. Have you been enjoying it? Because I have. You know, it's just fun and games to me. This whole situation is just, you know, it's funny. It's cool that I'm kind of known for that now, to the point of where, like, people I'm not even familiar with are talking about it. So it is a fun situation. And as always, guys, thank you for checking out this video. If you are new to the channel, be sure to hit that subscribe button. Be sure to like and share the video as well. And as always, I will catch you guys on the next one. Later.